So I went in there, and it's a Buddhist restaurant, and it was great. And then I was offered a job to run a radio station in Belgrade, and I'd kind of painted myself in a corner, I suppose. I was running a restaurant. I was in the wrong relationship at the time. It wasn't working out, and I'd left my family. I wasn't with my blood family anymore. I'd walked out on them. I think I was really on this vigil to find out who I was. And I was offered this job in Belgrade, which I flatly turned down because I knew that the war had just begun in the Balkans. And,
yes.
And I said to the guy who offered it to me, why don't we go and work for Gaddafi? And I mean, that would be possibly an equivocal good idea. But then I thought, last night I did something rather strange. In the full moon night, I asked if there's anybody out there, could you get me out of this? And I was offered the job the next day. So I went. And I took the last plane in before international sanctions were levied on Serbia. We had 2 years of, it was a gravy train. I mean, we all did very well. We were, running this radio station in the middle of Belgrade, and it was all foreign DJs run by an apolitical businessman who ran the radio station, who hated Milosevic and what the regime was doing. And then the war intensified, and we got bombed out. I stayed. I remember my boss, Dragan Radonic, saying, why do you stay? So I said, my heart's bigger than my brain. He said, welcome. So I stayed, and I became like a Balkan postman pad. I was taking supplies in and out of Serbia because, the Serbs are extraordinary people, and Milosevic was killing his own people. I mean, the shelves in the supermarket were just shelves. Yeah. So we were bringing in insulin, milk powder. There was nothing for anybody there.
But then you got to teach yoga with the British Army at one point, is
No,
that right?
no, with the Serbian army.
You were with the Serbian army?
Yeah.
Okay.
Serbian, it was
even more
crazier.
Yeah.
I had my passport stolen.
Yeah.
I made a documentary. We took mafia money and we went around the world because I was actually running the radio station at one point on my own. Right. Everybody left, and I just felt inept spinning discs in the middle of a war, and I asked inside in a meditation, what can I do? What can I do that be more meaningful? Because this is insane. And the thought came immediately was, take recordings of celebrities and broadcast it into the war zone. So I spoke with Dragan, and he said, great idea. So I then got on this broken telephone line, and between my shifts, I was running the radio station on my own, I would call up everybody in the world. I mean, I called James Brown, the Dalai Lama, Mother Teresa. Yeah, I got through. I got through to Mother Teresa's second, who's on a camel safari in Morocco, who said yes, you could give an interview the next day if you could set it up. So we got her recorded. We recorded her over a broken telephone line in Serbia. James Brown, I had to go to see B.B. King, Harry Dean Stanton, the Neville brothers, Bjork. I mean, loads and loads and loads. And so we took money, and we took mafia money, literally. I don't know where it came from, and quite frankly, I didn't care less. I just wanted to do this thing, and they smuggled us out of Serbia because there was no credit cards. We had the highest inflation in the world in '94, so that we had money stuffed in our knapsacks and in our shoes, and they smuggled us out of Serbia, and we flew to America. The first recording was with B.B. King, and then we did 24 flights across the States, came back, recorded the Dalai Lama in Dharamshala, McLeod Ganj.
And they were giving messages of peace?
Peace. Yeah. Please stop the war, please stop fighting.
Yeah,
we had a three-sided war. I mean, if you remember, it was a crazy, nobody knew who they were fighting. Yeah. And the atrocities were phenomenal. We were in the middle of a Serbian winter at one point. It was 22 degrees minus. The atrocities it was carnage. And there was no food, there was no heating. It was just dreadful. And this was Europe, ostensibly. So we broadcast that into the war zone. I don't know what it did. I don't know what the effect was, but we raised enough money to rebuild Vukovar, which was in Bosnia. After that point, and we had an ovation at the Moscow Film Festival, and I had an interview. I was entertained by Prince Karađorđević, who gave me his time to say thank you, and I was blessed by Pavle, who was the head of the Serbian church. But then I had my passport stolen.
Right.
And it got really bad, and I was on the run from the Serbian police. And I ended up teaching soldiers in the middle of the war for food. Sorry, what I wanted to say was that in a war there's an extraordinary paradigm, which is you don't know how long you have, because when you see a bullet whiz past your face, and you think it just whizzed past my face, and things are exploding around you. It's all about yoga practice becomes different. All the tradition that I'd grown up in, and I'd practiced and I'd taught, became sort of amalgamated into this very strange thing that I now practice and teach all over the world. And I used to whack up the music to drown out the sound of the war.
So you were teaching them yoga with loud music, in effect?
Well, no. To begin with, it was my practice, because it's my drug.
It's for your own
my
purpose.
Own, to keep my sanity. Okay. Because all soldiers in war, they take as much drink and as many narcotics as they possibly can, because reality is too hard. Yeah. So my drug is yoga. I mean, it has an extraordinary effect on me. And so I used to practice like that. So they saw me practicing like that. Okay. And they got involved, and it began like that.
And what kind of reception did you get from them?
I remember them standing there with Kalashnikovs going, "What is this? Why you do it? And что? Why?" And I said, "Because it's what I do." And so they started. The music was great. I'd whacked it up high, so they liked the music. So they started, and they were laughing, and it's a way that I work with people anyway. I always play the fool. I never stand in ceremony with people. I can't bear this elitist thing that happens in the world of yoga, where someone thinks that a posture or a position is, in some way elevates them. They lose their humility. They lose their humanity. And nobody can connect with it anymore. And all the masters that I was lucky to train with were fabulous people who had humility. They weren't caught by their conceit, because conceit kills it. Yeah. And yoga becomes something that it's not.
So you developed yoga beats.
Yeah.
Did you develop that initially in Yugoslavia? Was that
Yeah, that's how it began. It became, because I suppose Yugoslavia put it together for me. Before I went there, I was teaching kids who, when you teach children yoga posture, they kind of shift. They move in their bodies. And I'd say, well, stand still. But they'd kind of move again. Yeah. So in the end, I was thinking, well, who's really the teacher? I mean, they're suppler than I'm ever going to be. And let me just try that, because their body's moving naturally. I'm trying to impose this thing on them. So I started allowing my body to shift a little bit. And I found it very comfortable. It's like when you put clothes on, you kind of shift until you feel comfortable. You don't just put them on unless you're, out of your mind. You kind of shift till you feel good in them. And you go, oh, that feels nice. Or some shoes. And so in the same way, you shift within the body till the body feels comfortable. And I went to Serbia with that paradigm of having learnt that from children. And then it occurred to me that, why don't I ask my shoulder for permission? Why am I hacking into my body like this, pushing it every day, so that it creates endorphin, so I become an endorphin addict? Yeah. If I ask permission, I either get permission or I don't. Either way, it's compassion, and there a love affair begins. Now that sounds very wet, but the love affair is extraordinary, because you start to feel love at the place you're supposed to feel it, I believe. If yoga means union, then it means I like who I am. I love me.
Which is a great starting point.